You're listening to Within Tolerance, a podcast for machinists by a machinist. I'm your host, Dylan Jackson from Proteum Machining. And this week I am very happy to welcome Simon Hanmer. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you for having me.
So, for those who don't know who you are or what you do, give us the backstory. Where do you work? What do you guys do? All that good stuff.
So, Freddy Products is the company. I am, well, my term is managing director, but I guess you guys in the States call it CEO, although I don't like to use titles. There's no sort of hierarchy in our place. Freddy is a manufacturer of, um, again, you'll have a term for it, but they're coolant recycling machines. Some might call sump sucker, vacuum, chip vac, um, and we've been making these since the early 1960s.
Wow. Well, before we get into your backstory, let's get into the company's backstory. Our first question from the Patreon from Alex Bellringer was why the name Freddy? So why don't we start down the Freddy rabbit hole and, how did it get to where it is now?
Okay, so this is tricky because I joined the company in 2009. The person that started it is a guy called Paul de la Pena. He's still in the company, but he's 93. And
Oh,
I
wow.
obviously have to glean information from him as to how it happened. But what he wanted was a name for it rather than calling it ABC 123. He just thought a name, whether it be John, Simon, Dylan, it didn't matter. But he wanted something that could work in lots of different languages. So in English, Fred is a word. You can have Freddy, Frederic, so you could get a sort of you get male and female. But that's his explanation. So he says it just worked for him back then, and that's how it stayed. And well, we were the first to have a name on our vacuum like that. Others now have since followed. There's probably a bigger company for the domestic market. I don't know if it comes to America, but they're called Henry. They approached us to see if we'd have any objections some 20 years later, which we don't. Um, so that's how Freddie came about.
Okay. And then was he a machinist and saw the need for this? Or, how did he come up with a coolant filtration vacuum?
He was his family were in machinery, more sort of sliding head lathe uh, type products, but he broke away thinking supply of oil would be the way to go. He supplied an expensive Swiss oil, um, and he did very well out of it. But what he couldn't understand when he was called in to customers is why they were throwing it away. And it made him think, could I do something with that oil rather than throwing it away? And that's quite forward thinking for a guy that's before the company started in 1960. So he's thinking about this in the 1950s. Can I clean it somehow? So that's how the first prototype machines came about.
That's great. I love products like that are born of necessity. Like there's a truth and an honesty out of products like that. I mean, not to say that I don't love, inventors that just come up with something, but I think that it's extra cool when it's, born out of a direct necessity versus, just, oh yeah, let's filter cool it, something like that.
Well, you'd think it would hurt his business model because if he's selling oil, the last thing you want to do is clean it up. But
Right.
I think it added something. It made it more genuine for him to look after his customers. It wasn't about here's a sale, another sale, another sale. Look, I'm looking after you. I'm trying to make this work and last. Um, so that's where the sort of recycling came from, and that's what we've always done. Might not be trendy or popular, and the sort of suck and dump approach might be what most people know if they have some form of vacuum. But I applaud him for that. So it's all down to him.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't want to pick your brain too much about the history before the company, before you were in the company, but what kind of growth and where has the business gone since you joined? You said in 2009.
Yeah, so in truth, Freddie never really did lots of things for him. It was always about the oil. So up until probably the 1970s, it's just ticking along. It's just an ancillary to his oil sales. He had spin-offs from that. Packaging came because if you've got lots of oil, you need barrels, and he had like a microbiology company. So up until, say, the 80s, he's sold off the oil business, he's sold off the packaging business, and then Freddy is left. Um, and it's not a big turnover at all. It's a tiny little business, but it's so popular in the UK, only the UK. It's the sounds arrogant, but it's just people refer to something as a Freddy even when it's not. It's the means to in engineering to clean out. Um, but it never really did that well. So I joined in 2009. I've known him through two previous businesses that I've helped, and he's just sort of said, "Would you come and help me?" Um, his previous people that tried to run it over 2 years have just brought in what they know rather than focusing on what's so good about Freddie. So I inherited a lot of junk, um, and focused on the product and can we can we dig them out from basically zero, um, and to where we are today. So there was no funding. Nobody's put their hand in the pocket. It was just, let's give it a go for 6 months and see what happens. Um, I'm glad we did because I nearly didn't join.
Yeah, I'm definitely glad you did. So was Sanborn then kind of after you joined, or did you guys already have Sanborn as a distributor?
Sanborn's relationship was formed before me.
Okay.
There was a guy there called Jim West who'd seen Freddie, I think, at a trade show. So they were just taking, a few units at a time. Let's say one a month is not necessarily a lot of Freddies, but it was something, and it just sort of supplemented the UK market. But as I say, when I joined, I don't think they'd done anything at all. It was sort of a dip. It had just well, it was around the recession time. 2008, 2009 was when things were tough
Oh yeah,
for us
definitely.
anyway in the UK. So their usual business wasn't there. And I remember coming in and thinking, what are all these tanks in the factory? And it was the stuff that America hadn't ordered.
Oh wow.
It was sort of stockpiled up. So I'm thinking, right, can we turn this into cash somewhere else? Um, but yeah,
So did you guys? What was the model lineup at that point?
the model lineup was quite big. We didn't have any small stuff. So that was the first thing I noticed because the job previous it was for me was automotive, and most automotive manufacturers have a good range. They cater for every member of the public. So you have something small, you have something large, you have something flash and fast. And Freddie was sort of up the upper end of the scale. We know we're not the cheapest, but what can't be matched is the fact that we last 30 to 40 years. Proven. That's again not me saying making stuff up. It's out there. You can go and get it.
Yeah, well,
Which
I love seeing your posts on Instagram when they come in for a retrofit or a refurbishment, and they're almost black. You can almost not see
yeah,
the orange anymore.
exactly. So um, yeah, it, it, it's something that it's something that's very important to us is longevity, and we wouldn't want it any other way. Um, sorry, I've
Yeah.
lost my train of thought now. Where
No,
were
no,
we?
no. Well, so before I kind of want to get into what you did with the company, but before we do that, let's talk about your backstory. How did you get to Freddie? What's your education in? What did you have any manufacturing experience? All that stuff. Let's get into who you are.
Okay, so I'm going to be the worst person you've had on the podcast in terms of experience. So no, I can't program. I'm rubbish with a computer. If I have to do a drawing for something, it's with pencils, and someone cleverer than me within Freddy turns my pencil drawing into something in CAD. Um, my background is probably, what's the best to say, sales and marketing. Um, nothing very clever in terms of my academic background. Not because I couldn't do it. I just got to a point where I was enjoying what I was doing, and I put off university. I thought, let's have a year out and work, and that got me into my first job. So I'm a farm boy. Um, got into an agricultural sort of supplies company and really enjoyed it. And that's where I met the founder of Freddie. He was a customer, or he became a customer. There was no sort of trying to take me at that point to sort of work for him. He was just a great person to learn from because I wanted to know how he'd got to the position that he was. Um, and at the same time, m- my second job employer was also a customer there. So when I did a 10-year with that agricultural company, and I felt like a change, I ticked all the boxes. It was then, well, you've heard of the brand BMW. So I then went to do 10 years with BMW, and I
Oh
think
wow, I had no
Fr
idea.
Freddie, the F Paul at Freddie was sort of, I could have probably gone to him at that point, but I jumped for him the wrong way. I went into BMW. What I do like is brands of quality. I know there's gonna be uproar now. There'll be a lot of people saying, "Well, no, I don't like a BMW," but I like the fact that you very rarely throw one away. A BMW is, again, like Freddie, if you had one from 1960 or 1970, you don't scrap it. It's gonna be worth a fortune. So I did 10 years with them, and again, I just ticked all the boxes. I'd done everything that I wanted to do, and I fancied a change, and that was the point at which Paul said, "Well, do you think the skills that you've had for job 1 and job 2, could you come to me?" So I thought, "Yeah, we'll give it a go." Um, and yeah, okay, maybe I don't have a university degree and I can't program in Fusion, but let's see where it goes. The principle is the same. It's about efficiency, making everything run smooth, looking after customers, and delivering the best. And the product range, that was what we were talking about. It was good. It really was good, but it didn't cater for one man in a shop. And I think there's lots of people I've learned now that people listening to this will be familiar with names like Alec at Job Shop in America in Corpus Christi. He's well known. He's not going to run a massive Freddy. He doesn't need it, and he's proven even with some of the large plant lists he's got, he can manage with something called the micro. So and that's something I penned and thought, well, will this work? So we now have what I think is a good range.
Yeah, definitely. So you came into this company, it wasn't selling as much as, obviously it could have. What was the first thing you did? Coming into as a salesperson or, somebody who's good in sales and marketing, when you see a company like that, where do you turn? What do you start looking into? What do you start changing?
So honestly, they had zero cash balance. They owed a lot of money, which people can look up online, to back to the family, so the Dillapenna family. Um, and the only thing I could do is just look at what was on the shelves in terms of stock. So it really was a fire sale, but none of the stuff was Freddy. It was I don't know if what you call them in the States, but you see these ride-on devices in a supermarket that clean the floor. It's got
Yeah.
like a squeegee blade on the back. So they had those. They had I don't want to knock anybody, but let's cheap foreign vacuums, which were just for dry applications, all sorts of things, but they were all cannibalized. So it was just a case of eBay to start with, and anything just to turn it into some cash so that I could go again and rebuild. Um, and that was the sort of starting block. The first month, can we just break even, or can we just make a few $100s? And that literally what it was from the September through to the December of 2009.
Oh wow. Okay. And so once you got the books kind of right or starting that way, what was your next step?
Next move, I wouldn't say we rocketed forward particularly, just in sort of 1 year in terms of development, not like some of you machining guys where you see lovely 3D printers and things piling in, but I didn't have the money. It was really looking after every customer that did inquire. The one thing that helped, that everybody wanted from us, was our address book, because if you've been operating since 1960, our list for the UK was phenomenal. So there was a lot of machines out there. And I thought, well, there's got to be some sort of service business, or can we care for those? Can we get into them? And it was just a case of honestly hitting the phones and following up people. Is everything okay? Is there anything I can do for you? And even if it was only genuinely a seal that they wanted, it was just making them aware that there was someone there that wanted to care for them. So it just climbed out of that. We couldn't do a great big campaign in a magazine. We couldn't afford to attend any show. Um, in that time, however, Sanborn, that was good because they could afford to go to a show. And I think you have IMTS. So every 2 years, You just kept your fingers crossed that maybe they had a good one, and, you'd get it in that IMTS year, you'd get a container or maybe 2 containers, and that would just keep you going just for a bit longer.
Okay. And then, so what would you say, since your tenure started, was the big tipping point? Where, because I mean, now we look at your Instagram and you're filling up your showroom with extra inventory because you're selling so much. So when would you say that tipping point happened, and do you attribute it to one thing, or was it just kind of continuous work?
I think what was good for us was about 2018, 2019 before COVID. It was COVID everywhere, but for us, it came sort of around. It was March of 2020, so we were enjoying. It was just a nice growth to that point. Um, but if you want to talk about tipping point, I think really it comes recently. It's after COVID. Really, that's the thing that changed and perhaps got us a bit more well known out there. We were quite happy as we were, but 2020 is when things changed.
Wonderful. And real quick, we forgot to do it at the beginning. Where can people find you online if they want more information?
There is a website, um, freddyproducts.co.uk. Um, but in truth, I think probably it's our Instagram that more people would go to. I mean, me personally, I'm not a fan of a website. I don't think it's sure you can get a tech sheet, but I think it's far better looking at a video that someone else has made. It's more useful, it's more real, and it might relate to them because it's been recorded against the DNM. You don't want me in a showroom with a tank of water and some marbles. You want a real deal. So I would always say, look at Freddy Products Insta.
Okay, great. Yeah, I wish I had had a GoPro or something on my head the other day, because I was running a bunch of peak plastic in one of our machines, and it blocked up the chip shoots and just dumped probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 gallons worth of coolant all over the floor. And it's the first time since I've had the Freddy where I've been able to use it to pick up a spill. And like, oh, it was like night and day. Because usually, we just dump a bunch of pig mat all over everything and grab the mop, and it would be I mean, it still was a pain in the ass, obviously. Like, spilling coolant's never fun, but it was so much easier with that vacuum attachment. I was like, oh, cool, I finally get to use it. But I was in such a rush to like contain it that I didn't have a chance to, snap a video or a picture or anything.
No, and you don't need to in the heat of the moment, as it were. But it's so rapid in terms of pickup. But you're a good example. I mean, you did one, and uh, there's you aren't going to dump a load of chips in your pan just to make a video. I think you surprised yourself, hand in, pulled out, and again, I suppose people could knock us and go, "Well, he's made that up," but why would you? And
Right.
you've gone from a sump that was sort of maybe 50% oil to a basket full of chips in no time, and you're away and up and running again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, and I told you when we first started talking that I think we did like a clean out on one of our machines maybe 8 months ago or something like that, before we had a Freddy, and it took me all day. I mean, it was 6, 7 hours because we had to pump all the coolant out and then get all the fines out, and using a shop vac, even with like a vortex, chip separator kind of thing, it just took forever. Like, it was just a giant pain. So I was incredibly happy, that I could do all of that in one. Like, there was no, because we were using some little giant pump to pump the entire sump out into 55-gallon drums, and then worrying all about that. It's just, yeah, it was a pain. So well, let's get into some other questions that we got. Ethan Patain asked, "What's your favorite color scheme for a Freddy?" So you guys are kind of known for these
oh,
wonderful Freddys that you guys are doing recently. What's your
E
favorite?
Ethan, great question. Really good question. That's Well, I don't want to upset anybody because it's the customers that keep coming up with the stuff because, we don't dream it up and then sell the machines. It's the requests that come in. Uh, 2 or 3 cool ones. Uh, in the last, 2 years, there was somebody that did something using a product called Core 10, and it's a powder. Comes from America, but he had it brought over, and it makes the Freddy look like Mater out of cars, the pickup truck. It's got that sort of rusty patina look about it, and that's Christian at Hudson Lighting. I mean, that was very cool, but I was so nervous because he provided the powder.
Oh,
Um,
geez.
it's like 10, 15 times more expensive than normal powder. I thought, I cannot mess this up. That was good. We had a request for R2D2, which honestly, that turned out amazing. And I know what it is, but I haven't watched a Star Wars film. Again, I'm going to get shot now, but yeah, that was just incredible. And then we've had two minions, which you think I'm not sure how this is going to go, but they're so striking, and it's fun.
Yeah,
So, and there's more that seem to keep coming that people dream up, and I just think, wow, yeah, never thought of that. So we'll just keep on doing it.
that's great. Yeah, I think that it's, you know, it all doesn't have to be so serious. Like a little bit of whimsy is kind of fun, especially on something that's going to be sitting around in your shop. It's either going to be bright orange or it's going to be, a minion or like you said, R2D2 hiding around the corner or something like that.
I love orange, but why not personalize it? I mean, somebody recently did BB-8, and it was the two children in the company. So mum and dad let them pick it, and they did it, and they're all fans. And I'm happy that we're able to do it. I mean, the audience are going to fall over now when I say I don't charge uh, extra for. The only thing that I do is the graphic bit costs me, but paint's paint. It's got to have something on it. So unless you pick something with diamond flake in, I'm going to paint it for you. So and you'd be $100 at worst for your graphics. So why not have some fun?
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. Well, we were speaking about colors. Tux Garage asked why the color orange. So where'd the branding come from?
Okay, so originally, early 60s, Freddy had always been blue. Much like well, I can see it, audience can't, but the storage bins behind you. Um, and that's fine, but realistically, from a shop point of view, it doesn't stand out. Colors aren't bright normally in a shop. Maybe things have changed now with certain machine brands putting a bit more pizzazz into it. So he wanted it to stand out. He was pretty cute, pretty clever back then to think, right, this is advertising. So late 60s went orange. Um, and it's quite amusing now how many people are orange or have gone orange. Even people that copy us have gone orange, which is quite flattering. Um, so it is, yeah, the orange is through and through what you would know us for, but we don't honestly don't mind. It can be anything.
Do you see the blue ones come back through for refurbishment?
Genuinely, yes. So there's two universities in the UK that use them. So they haven't done the refurb. So again, maybe people are going to laugh at me now, but there's no obsolescence in Freddy. So I haven't retired anything. So if you personally buy a machine for your shop and it's 1962, you can still get everything from me to keep it going. And if somebody retires a part on me, so let's say there's a particular motor provided by Bosch or something like that, then I'll get you a workaround. So there's never a point when anything is game over. So anything can be refurbished to a point. Obviously, if it's been hit by a grenade or somebody's squashed it flat with a forklift truck, yeah, okay, I'm going to struggle. But I could make a new tank for it and put the other bits on. So that is an offer.
Well, so that actually brings up another one of our questions. Was Paul Alfaro asked any Freddy horror stories? Or I'm sorry, actually he says, have you ever had a rebuild or service request that has gone too far, and what led to it? So, what's the worst Freddy you've ever seen come back?
There's a lot of Freddies that make you wince. And the reason this is the case is because people use it just to sump out and they don't do any kind of filtration. And without a filter inside, all you're doing is creating the same scenario as you found with the sump in your machine. It just builds up and up and up to a point where you're going to do a dig out in that. So we've had them filled with, I had one that was filled with like a wax. So it went in fine because it was hot, but it just solidified. So you just had a Freddy with a candle inside it. And that was an absolute nightmare to dig out. I did that myself. Um, Nightmare. We've had someone suck, uh, you call it gasoline, don't you?
Mhm.
So we've had someone do gasoline, which is not good.
No,
Uh,
that's gotta be terrible for every seal in the Freddy.
well, it's dangerous because, potentially, boom.
Right, yeah.
Um, we we have had somebody suck up. So the scenario was sucking up aluminium chips is fine. No problem with that. Everybody could do that. But it was left in the machine because I guess somebody got to 5 o'clock. They needed to get home and thought, I'm not emptying this. So they've gone home. At night, cleaner comes in and has used it on one of those ride-on scrubber dryer machines. So it's sucked up like a soapy solution. Soapy solution reacts with aluminium. I don't know if you know what it produces, hydrogen.
Mhm.
That went boom. And I remember, I don't know if it went as a post, but because our tanks aren't just a pressed tin, it contained the explosion, and we just had this sort of you can imagine a cylinder of a Freddy is fine, but it was just it looked like the cylinder had had too many cakes. It had just put on a bit of weight. So the guy was he was really happy because all he had to do is buy a new tank and everything else worked. Um, but that was beyond. I couldn't. You have an explosion in something, you really can't repurpose that. You have to let that go.
Yeah, no joke. Oh my goodness. I never would have thought of, leaving. I never would have, because I definitely have left chips overnight or something, but, like, I never thought, like, "Oh, yeah, this could make hydrogen gas if I do it wrong."
Well, it's a good thing to do because honestly, I don't want to knock the person that did it, but if you do suck up a load of chips, you might as well leave it in the chip basket in the filter to drain.
Right.
So it's going to be a better position in the morning. So what you probably need to do is just leave a note there for whoever, please don't touch this. So it went
Yeah.
wrong. But honestly, it's rare that you can't rescue any Freddy, no matter 1960, 1970. Some really are abused. It could be 2010, but anything we will look at.
Okay, and then, yeah, his other question was what use cases have you seen outside of the norm? So, obviously this waxy substance was a weird case, but what other, inquiries have you had about use cases?
Interesting that the audience might want. The one probably that stands out is I would say we in the UK have a product called a pot noodle. So to describe it to those that wouldn't have come across it, a plastic pot with dry noodles and a dry powder and a sachet of soy sauce. And what you have to do is boil a kettle and tip it into that pot, which is about the size of a coffee mug. So you get hot noodles. It's a really cheap. You get them at gas stations because you're desperate and you've got a meal in a pot.
Okay.
We got called to the factory that makes them, and basically what they do when they finish the shift of making 1 million pots a day, they get a big hot washer, wash everything down. It goes into drains. But you imagine any food that's left in a drain, the stench was like something had died. But we did it. It's liquid based. It's like a giant curly piece of swarf. So we picked it up, but I burnt most of my clothes. It's just you wanted to bag it up and get rid of. So that was probably the worst. But yeah, it isn't just machine shops. It's amazing what you get called into. Um, and so long as it's not explosive, there's no reason why I'm up for having a go. I mean, recently, of all things, we're picking up this last week lettuce. Would you believe? So someone's asked, "Can you?" I just thought pieces of lettuce that are wet and small pieces of compost. Why not? And it works. So we're, I'm always happy to have a go. I'm quite happy to fall flat, but we got nothing to lose by trying. It's all development, trial, and testing.
Right. So, do you guys offer sump cleaning and all of that as a service, or is it kind of a sales call that, like, "Oh, we'll do it for you and show you how it is?"
Never offered it as a service. In the UK, it can be done where if you were based there, for example, and you didn't need a Freddy on a regular basis, you could rent one from us. So we have the luxury of obviously sending out because our land mass is so small, you can have it same day or next day. It's a bit more difficult in the States to do something like that.
Yeah.
Um, but no, it's not been offered as a service. You tend to find for us in the UK that's done by guys and girls that sell oil. They have that service. It suits them So most of them seem to use Freddy to get it out so they can then put in their Qualichem, Hangstafers, whatever the oil is that they want to try.
Okay. Well, actually, this might be a great time then to Tux Garage asked, A, why do they work so good? And B, how often should you maintain them? And so let's answer the first one. Why do they work so good? What do you have a secret sauce, or is it just a good design, or what?
Um, I think the thing that helps us a lot is the design of the motor that is in the Freddy. So I could go abroad and get a really cheap, nasty motor. Um, but I don't want to do that. I want LS3 V8. I want power. And, something like the Micro is our baby. It's only got 2 kilowatts. You found yourself. It doesn't muck around. It wants to tear your hand off.
Yeah.
So it's the configuration within it that gives it the oomph, which I think people find surprising. And that's with the 2-inch hose. Competitors tend to have to use half that size or 3/4 to even match us for lift and performance. Um, and then the build. I don't know anybody that's stupid enough to make a vac hand built. And why would you want to make it last so long? It doesn't work for a business model. You want people to swap every 2 or 3 years, probably,
Right.
but that doesn't work for me. I want it to be your best friend in the shop, something you turn to and it works, and it's not going to cough its guts up and make an even bigger mess. So it doesn't matter what you put it at, neat oil, aluminium, brass, peak, acetal, it will just pull.
What does the build timeline look like then, since it's hand built? How long does a Freddy take to get made? Like, let's say a micro.
Um, Micro in actually assembly from a painted product through, you do probably in 3/4 of a day. Some of the bigger kit that we've made, which you'd have to pull with a agricultural tractor, you're talking weeks. I suppose the average time across all models probably a day per unit. Fab time, bare metal to make, probably about a day.
So you
Um,
guys are taking sheet and rolling it into the drums and stuff, or is that a purchase?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So we start with sheet on everything. There's certain processes we can't do. Um, so we have the sheet, but spinning is an old-fashioned process, and it's done by hand, not robot. So we will send those out. Um, but I'm proud to say that everything that we outsource generally is within 20 miles. So what's that? 30 kilometers for those who are of different in Europe. Um, So it's all nice local support. So rarely we get caught out. If a boat gets stuck in a channel somewhere in Europe, it doesn't affect our supply. So um, yeah.
That's great. So are you guys blanking on like CNC plasmas or something, or is like how do you cut the sheet to then form it?
So lasers next door. So it's lasered out. It's hand rolled and formed and bashed and grinding. Again, I suppose people expect perhaps robots, but it's very the product's perhaps old fashioned and built strong, and I'm very proud of the fabrication team. Well drilled. They amaze every day. Um, so rolling, bending, forming, awesome to watch.
Yeah, that's great. So what's the thought process behind keeping it like that? I mean, obviously you could, have some CNC benders or something and have it a little more automated. Is it because it works so well as it is and you've got, all these people trained up, or, it seems like you guys are actively expanding. So what's the thought process behind that?
Well, honestly, I think if I could employ you and Zap and get you over into the UK, you'd change it completely for me. Um, Probably Zap could do it with his eyes closed. It probably, in all honesty, the restriction is me. Someone needs to sack me and put somebody younger with greater thought that can program a robot like he can to do it. But again, uh, somebody quite different to me in makeup would probably be chasing the dollars. And this is going to sound mad now, but it's not about the dollars. For me, it's about the fun and the support and the enjoyment I have in doing what I'm doing, uh, and seeing every day people smiling and we're making something. I wouldn't want to remove someone and have a robot welder do it. So I know that's going to sound silly, but it works really well for us.
No, I think that's great. I think a lot of us can empathize with that and understand that. You know that there are some things I do purely for the money, and parts I don't really want to make and that I don't like, and but there's a lot that I do in my business that it's like I want to enjoy it. Like I want to have fun. What's
It's
the
the
point? You know?
craft. It's the love that goes into it, and I know it's gonna sound cheesy, but watching someone form the metal and just putting their heart and soul into it, it just seems more special, and it's not a marketing thing at all, it's just I feel so proud to watch them do it and test it, and if it needs some more, they do, check it, and it's just that whole process of craft with something that's quite different. You get it in the car world, so I've not changed the business model, but you can buy a car that's just smashed out by a robot, or there are certain brands out there that it's hand built and it's something quite different, and that's why we are a bit more money than everyone else. But as I say, you're going to have it for a very, very long time, and we'll touch on it probably next. But Freddy's going to pay for himself very, very quickly if you use him correctly.
Yeah. So are you guys? I would imagine that that's not your limiting factor then right now. You haven't reached the point where you're, super far behind on fabrication.
No, I think my ethos at the moment is that as I see the list change and the orders come in, I'm not shy in putting more staff in and keeping the way we do it. So um, this year particularly, we just seem to be employing. So we've got two more welders starting in I think it's a week or 2 weeks. So you do that, well, that means you need two more in build, and then you need two more somewhere else. So it's just constantly going. Um, and building up like that.
So what have you put in place to make sure that these people are trained? 'Cause, I mean, it sounds like you guys have a pretty strong company culture. So, how do you make sure that these people are a good fit for your company, and B, trained and producing that quality that you're looking for?
So we've got it started off with a guy that I got in, someone I knew, younger brother of someone I worked with. And he is sort of the kingpin in the fabrication shop. The beauty with him is he can do absolutely everything. Every single job. He's the best welder, best person to assemble, and the way he trains people is fantastic. The care and the time to make them get to that standard. There's no shortcuts, and he'll only sort of let them go, when they're ready. Like a kid, you take the stabilizers off, but you stay there until they're completely happy. I mean, we've taken two guys on this year that have no background whatsoever in anything that requires tools or electrics. Um, One has a background, he has a degree, so he's a clever guy, but he was actually working in a care home business. Um, and I just thought that's quite ballsy to come for an interview when your CV doesn't even read right. But he's brilliant at assembly of Freddy's. He's fantastic. And another guy, he's more used to chopping trees down. Again, no background whatsoever. And in a matter of months, we've got him into a very, very nice position of being again a fantastic guy for assembly. Um, so it's great that that team culture and looking after one another. There's no that isn't my job and folding arms and not caring. We all look after each other. And you'll find me with the machine, digging it out full of sludge and getting involved just as anyone that, like I said at the beginning, there's no sort of hierarchy. Everybody gets involved and does stuff, which is, again, I'm very proud of.
I think that's very powerful. Seeing the CEO, managing partner, whatever it's called, getting arms deep in gross sumps and stuff like that. That tells you something about the company for sure.
I love it. It just, yeah, I couldn't sit behind a computer doing spreadsheets. I have to be involved with it, and that's part of the care. You want to make sure the machines are okay and it's going out right, and is that sticker straight, and it's just that final sort of piece before it goes out of the door.
Are there things outside of normal business stuff that you guys do with the company and with your employees to kind of make that culture and make that family?
I think we do it in-house. I think when you come if you ever visited, um, which some people have done that have come over from, say, US, it probably looks way too relaxed, and there's a lot of things in our business that don't even look related to Freddy, projects that each of the team are working on, and in a normal business, you would not allow that. But, like a lot of Instagrammers, they have things they're working on as sidelines, like robots or cars or to name just a few. And it's the same for my guys. You know, if they get the work done, I don't mind them fabricating a petrol tank for a motorbike. There's a couple of racers in there that making race bikes, people restoring cars. It's again, it's unusual and it gives them the freedom and space to unleash creativity elsewhere.
Yeah, and it sounds like it works. I mean, I've always been a big proponent of outside projects. Like my first boss, after hours, I could use any machine I wanted as long as it wasn't set up for a job. I could use any of the tooling as long as, I tried my best not to break it. And I feel like I learned the most because of those. I could make it was a safe place to make mistakes that didn't cost the company anything. If I made a part out of tolerance for my own project, who cares? Like I'll make another one. They didn't care if I pulled from the scrap bin or if I, learned, oh, okay, that's too aggressive at a cut. Guess what? I won't do it on a customer part and I won't scrap something. So I've always been a really big fan of companies letting you do that.
It's relaxing. So for that individual, if they've been doing a tank, a Freddy tank, and they can go and move on to their motorbike tank, it just means if they can do it in work time, they'll get home in time, and that keeps a wife, a girlfriend happy, so they're not working all hours. And they've had a bit of enjoyment doing a bit more to that bike, and then they come back happier doing than the Freddy. So
That's
that's how
great.
we try and do it. It seems to work, touch wood.
So yeah, Tuck's Garage. Other question was how often should you maintain them? And let's kind of get into the maintenance of a Freddy in general because I think that's even when I got mine, I reached out to you because I was like, what do I do with these bags? How do I clean them? And then I told you just before recording, somebody on the Discord was talking about that how their boss was worried, oh, they sucked up a contaminated sump, how do you clean the Freddy before you start cleaning clean fluid again? So yeah, let's get into all of that. How do you keep these things working?
So one of the things I learned early on, and we back at the beginning of the conversation about the longevity of Freddy, it was apparent that maintenance didn't happen a lot on them. And truth is, you don't really have to do much to them. Um, we have many customers that are quite happy to just run. You don't need to change the seal. The only time you might is because they go hard over a time, so you want a bit more squish under the lid that you take on and off. But I thought, well, that's a good thing. The last thing you want is a product that you buy and within 6 months you've just spent like half the cost of it again. Again, it just feels wrong. So the fact that you can run our kit with no big costs is great. Um, there are, however, people that need to tick boxes in businesses for health and safety reasons. So they like the mandatory service. Like in our country, we have an electrical test you must do every 12 months. So they like to tick the box and have the Freddy check to prove that performance is as it should be. But in truth, what service do you need? None. The only thing I would encourage is just to keep an eye inside them to make sure that you don't, because if you don't get the filter right, you're going to have a carryover of sediment or silt through into the machine, and you don't want to displace that Freddy, and you don't want to cause any problem with the float sort of shut off or cut off. So long as you keep an eye inside, which is easy to do, as you know, um, that's fine. If you've done something really wrong where you've sucked something that you think is, oh my God, absolute disaster. So I don't know what the worst is. Some black motor oil perhaps from something, or you've had a flood outside and sucked a drain up with pond water and leaves and horrible stuff, um, or a sewer, because people do.
Oof.
Yeah, no, really. I always recommend the hot water trick. So basically, bucket of hot water, not boiling water. no detergent, and that ferocity in any Freddy, you just suck that up, and it will smash through the pipe, through that filter basket and inside, and then just blow it out as quickly as you can.
And then that's
Um,
good to disinfect it too. If you're, let's say I suck up a thing that clearly has pond scum growing in my coolant sump, and then I want to go suck up my other coolant sumps and clean those, and I don't want to contaminate them. The hot water trick is good enough, or do you guys use bleach or alcohol or anything like that?
I've never gone down the route of bleach, biocide, or anything. I think, is it fair to say that temperature kills bacteria? I'm not a chemist or a scientist, but I think we've always been taught if you want to make something in water be better, boil it.
Right.
So the hotter it is, the better. I guess coolant guys and chemists will say, but from a point of view of cleaning out, I think that's more than enough to deal with the Freddy. I'm only sad we haven't recorded anything that you can go and watch. And here's a hints and tips from Freddy on how to clean it. The only thing I could encourage people to go and watch is, well, they're all going to probably know him, but if they don't, A Bomb. Um, he asked how he should clean his out. So I ended up having an hour with him on video teaching him what to do. So he has actually done a YouTube video where he's recorded pulling that water through the machine, cleaning it out and that process. So check that out on YouTube.
Okay. And then what about the filter bags? Because that was the question I had for you when I first got mine. You know, do I need to replace them every time? Do I have to knock out all of do I have to turn them inside out and blow them out with a hose? Like, how do I maintain those? When do I know to replace those? Because that was, I think, the most surprising answer you gave me.
Yeah, so the sales answer, if it was you and me in business, you'd go, yeah, buy a new one every week.
Right.
But in truth, all all filters can be reused, particularly the ones from 100 up to 1,000. I mean, maybe we should just say quickly, and I'll do it so everybody knows. We filter from 1 micron, which is ridiculously fine, and normal people wouldn't use unless you were doing gold, platinum, and silver, where you want to blind the filter deliberately. 5, 10, 25, 50, 75, 100, 200, 400, 600, and 1,000. Now, 100 to 1,000 is something that if you put your hand inside the bag, you can see the squares. It's just no issue. Those bags you just turn inside out, shake it out, leave it on a chip bin overnight, just keep using it. The only reason you'll want another one is because you've had an accident and caught it on something sharp. I don't mean swarf, I mean you've just pulled it or yanked it. So uh, we just don't, you won't see big sales on those. The sizes below 100, you can put them in you call them a parts washer. I guess you could use a pressure wash to wash it out, but in our country, it's a bit risky because that oily water, you don't want it going out and into streams and rivers. Um, but I know people do. Could you use an airline? In theory, but I wouldn't encourage people to do that because you don't want to atomize oil and breathe it. So it's really a test of your patience in washing. So if you take your machine shop, I don't know what a day's work is worth, and you don't want to tell your audience, but you don't want to spend 3 hours washing a filter out if you knew it was $20 to replace.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so again, on the finer sizes, I think you know when it won't work because you'll just see the flow slow. That vacuum just gets worse to a point where you go, okay, I need to do something, and you'll swap it over. So you'll put it in the parts wash. You can do that old-fashioned sort of dunking it in a sink or again a bucket of hot water to wash out. But I think if it's $20, I don't think we're expensive for a filter compared to a lot of machine companies that put filter systems on. So most don't seem to bat an eyelid. And I think when they know what program time and machine time is, they just go, yeah, I'll have one filter. But it's not a heavy consumable. You're not, if you're buying them every week, something's wrong.
Right. Well, yeah, that was the thing that surprised me is you were like, just keep using it. Keep using it until it sounds bad. And I was like, oh, duh. Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
And you haven't replaced anything. So
Right. Yeah. Have you seen people go long past when they're blind and burn out a motor before, or are those motors so overspec that, you can kind of suck against a hard wall and it's not going to burn out?
Yeah, so that's actually a very good question. Typically, if we went and bought, let's just call it a shop vac, so we're not picking on anybody. So something you can get from like a hardware store, um, and you spend less than $100. The motors on there are not designed to run continuously for anything more than perhaps 10 minutes. Because realistically, why would you be doing something more than 10 minutes? It's longer than the fill time of that device. But we test the hell out of our kit, so I know for a fact that I could leave the Freddy running for 24 hours. So just pulling air, and that to anything else would be a massive problem. So you could say, "Well, that's ridiculous, Simon. Why do you just make the motor last an hour? Because that's more than overspec." But yeah, we want to make sure that you have that life on the kit. So you're not gonna break it. So you blind that bag, there's nothing. It's just got so much muscle. It's just not a problem.
Okay, that's great. So have you seen them burn out though randomly, or is it pretty much a non-issue?
It isn't an issue for us at all. Um, the only way you could cause some damage is if you had an overfill. So
Okay.
for yours, you'd have to be so cruel to it that you've blocked it up with so much swarf that the float can't actually travel up and down. So if it can't travel up to shut off, the liquid then goes to the motors. But even then, because it's laughable, anyone else would have liquid going through the motors and electrical circuit, it would shut off. But we've put up lots of videos with customers with liquid just pouring out the back of the motors, and it's still running.
Okay,
And
okay.
that is not even something that we've recorded. That's our customers have recorded and thought it's funny because 'cause they're like, "No way, how's this happening?" So,
That's pretty amazing. Mr. Horrocks, a customer of yours, said, "Is your spaniel as dangerously greedy as his?"
yeah, we know Steve, so he has a spaniel. Yeah, it is. It'll take anything. It doesn't if it's any kind of food, it'll have it, but, all doggies need to keep away from chocolate and grapes, and I think he has trouble. So for those listening, he's someone we know well, a customer. So he's fired that question in.
Yeah, and his other question was, "Who has the best lawn, you or John at Penny?"
Ah, okay. So I know where he's gone with that. So that relates to COVID. Um, so during COVID, we shut the business. So maybe we can mention it might be a long-winded answer. So I took the decision in March to close Freddy of 2020 because COVID came and nobody knew what was happening. Obviously, a lot of staff were scared, so we just said, "Don't worry, everybody. Although we're closed, we'll pay you in full." So they had nothing to worry about. We removed all the stress off them. That put a lot on me though, because I'm no longer have a business. We are effectively shut. What was worse, maybe worse, was that I then became father, housekeeper, domestic. I was at home with two children, very young, carer, and what happened at that time because I was home, I was bored and fidgety, so I spent a lot of time making the house perfect, and the lawn became very striped. And at the same time, someone we know well, so it's a guy called John Grierson at Pennine Lubricants, so he's a big oil supplier. We were having a little bit of a competition. And I think because it was on Instagram, a lot of people saw it. So it was this sort of stripe off going on. Who had the best stripes? And honestly, he has by a mile. It looks like a tennis court.
Oh, wow.
But he's got a proper mower. I've got something that looks like a weed whacker, and he has one of these things that works like a combine, cylinder
Mhm.
mower.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
just like used on sports fields. It's the same for American football. You have these perfect. And I think he uses scissors. He gets on his hands and knees and cheats. So I think that's what Steve's asking.
Okay. Well, that brings me to shop news and new things, and you do have some new things happening with Freddie. What's going on in your world?
Well, yeah, you asked that question. So what's the biggest thing or thing happening for us? It's a case of the bad news is we're probably suffering from space because a lot of stuff now goes out in containers to distributors rather than ones and twos. So we're having to expand and basically go to an additional factory, which we're very lucky is just happens to be next door. So that's our biggest bit of news or what we're working on.
That's wonderful. I mean, it's a I'm sure both a wonderful and terrible thing, having to fill up your current building to the brim. But it'll be great once you have all that new space.
Yeah, it's just a problem when you're trying to make a container that has 40 odd machines in it. You've got to store them somewhere because you can't make them in one day. So they stack up and then it starts causing problems with flow. So you think, well, where the hell am I going to put them? And you don't want to be putting them 10 kilometers away or 10 miles away. So the chances of this happening next door is I do not know who's looking after us to make this happen. We if I go back in the conversation slightly, you were saying what are the tipping points in 2020? I can't thank the machinist community enough for I don't know if we have time to cover this or not. You'll have to nod and say yes or no.
Yeah, we got time.
So 2020, it comes back to this lawn story. We've shut Freddy. I don't know if we've got a business. Um, I don't know where the hell it's going. My key is to look after my friends in Freddy, so we can afford to pay them. Um, I'm pretty simple, so we don't burn up cash. We leave it in the business, so that was okay. We can give them reinsurance. But I thought, where the hell are we going to go? How do we get out there? How do we get to people? We didn't do Instagram. We didn't do Facebook. We didn't do anything. We could just about afford to do a show. And there's a few people that probably ought to be thanked here because I can't predict this path. We didn't have the money to go and spend and splash out in the New York Times. We wouldn't have been able to do IMTS. So uh, we thought, well, the only way you can get out of there is maybe we can get a few of us in Freddie to learn how to do some of this media. And I'm old. I'm 48. I shouldn't be playing on a phone, but there are times when you could at 2020 if you've got no pressure to learn and look. So we start putting up some of the stuff we've recorded on there, not pre-recorded as in fixed, but just old videos. We put it up, and you start getting likes. You think, well, why are people liking that? And then you start getting inquiries from it. So you're shut, but you're at home getting an inquiry for something that you recorded 6 months ago, but we don't do YouTube, so we had nowhere to put it. And it got you invites to, well, could you come and show us? And I thought, well, how can we come and show you? Surely everyone's shut. Oh no, we're making ventilators. I don't know if that was the same in the States,
Yeah, it
but
was.
okay. So we go and do a demonstration for a company in the middle of our country. And unbeknown to us, it's a guy called the UK Machinist. So I don't know if you've come across him at all.
Yeah.
Um, so Tom at the time had 8,000 followers. I don't know if that's a good or bad number, but I didn't really, know much about it. So we do a video because it was very distinctive on a coolant that was blue, Smurf blue, and it had an oil skin on it. And this is where you see that orange schnoz a lot. And we go in, and maybe this will help with the conversation for everybody listening. Is I visit so many people that think that a conveyor will empty a sump. There's this, and there's a general belief in machining that we have to stop every year to use a spade or shovel to dig out. Why? Why do we need to do that? It's like they've been taught in school that that is the norm. It has to be like that. And man, my coolant stinks. You see it all the time. Oh, I'd hate that job. It doesn't have to be like that. So we go into JKP, do the demo for the boss there. I thought this is so distinctive, and this skin just disappears off the surface. It's gone immediately, and you've got to get the skin off coolant because it stops oxygen getting in. I record it. I thought this is great. So I asked the boss, "Can we use this for our media?" "Yeah, we can." And Tom says, "Can I use it?" I said, "Well, absolutely. I mean, it's in your place." So
Right.
he said, "Yeah, I think that I want to put it up on my socials." So I thought, whatever. What we didn't realize, and he didn't realize, it exploded. It just it just went ridiculous. I don't know what the exact view count, but it was something like 300,000 views in just no time. I don't know what it is about it that people kept playing over and over and over. And that then made a lot of work for us. It was just sort of the inquiries. What is this thing that can take oil off that quickly? Because I've got a belt skimmer, I've got a disc skimmer, but this thing's just removed it in 1 second. I need to know more. Um, and then the two lads there, the machinist dude and the UK machinist, were like, Christ, we normally shut down for half a day. We get the shovels out. You've just done the whole thing in 5 minutes. But Andy, we need one of these machines. We need it now. And he's like, well, can you leave this here? And that's what we did. We left it there for them to play with longer to prove out.
Oh wow.
Um, so so it went sort of mad from that point. So I think UK machinist needs a shout.
Definitely, yeah. That's I want to say that that must be where I first saw it as well. Was that video, whether it was his or some repost account that reposted it, but
Well, maybe we say a little bit more for everybody if they want to hear it. So, yeah, it went to there, and then you get others asking. Now, given that I've never done Instagram and I've never looked at YouTube and I don't know the community like maybe you do, I then start getting messages from different people going, "Hey, how did so there's no sort of sponsorship here, and I'm going to embarrass myself because I should perhaps know this person, but there's a well-known knife maker in Canada, um, and I've got a guy in Josh at Firmworks saying, "How on earth have you got a machine into Grimsmo?" And I'm like, "Who's Grimsmo? You need to go and check him out. He makes the most amazing knives and pens." I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 oh my god!" As he said something really bad about the unit, and then I have to find out how it's happened, and it's Sanborn have distributed into Canada. Canada then have sold it to John. I'm thinking, "Oh no!" And he records a video that his opening gambit is an $8,000 vacuum cleaner. Thinking this is going to be the worst ever now. Bye bye, Freddy. But obviously he's enjoying it, and it's like, oh my god. So who's aligned the stars to make that happen? Um, the same with a guy called Paul V, who needs a shout out. The guy that runs IG Chip of the Week.
Mhm.
Um, we sponsored him. That was again, I don't. We didn't do anything with the competition. That's down to them to do. Would we back them? It's not big money, as you can tell from the sponsors within it. But that's how a machine ended up with Adam. Again, someone I didn't know. Paul V says, "Can somebody called Adam ring Freddy because he needs some tuition?" Yeah, of course, we'll help any customer like we did for you. And
Right.
this guy's chatting to me. He said he asks for permission. Can he put the video up on YouTube? And I said, "Well, it's your machine. You want it. Do what you like with it." He says, "Do you follow us?" I said, "I'm really sorry. No, we don't do YouTube. Go follow us." Massive panic. Oh my god. So that was the sort of we've gone full circle. That was the sort of tipping point of why then you and others might then start to hear because it's just a sort of organic, much like the business ran at the beginning, and we said it just crept up. But that crash in 2020, where I probably wanted to jump off a bridge to get to the point now where it's just so much fun. The community's amazing. The people in it. When you're having a day that is stressful and you get someone like yourself out of the blue that just does something or job shop, I mention there's too many people to mention, but you do something funny and you get Patriot Machinist doing, or I think Daniel at Bavaria CNC,
Mhm.
one
Yeah, he's
awesome
been
guy.
yeah, he's
Yeah,
been on the
he's
show.
he's been on, and you hear them because you ask what's new in your shop, and they'll mention Mazak CNC or DMG, and Freddie's popped up a few times. Um, So I can't thank the entire community. They have dragged us from COVID shut to where we are now, having a lot of fun, and we are doing our damnedest to give back.
That's amazing. That really is cool, and I think that that's a testament to the product you guys make. All of these people wouldn't have picked it up because it was bad. They would have, gone somewhere else, or they would have probably made a slight post of like, "Oh, I don't like this thing. On to the next one," kind of thing. But and,
I
and I
think
I think also anybody who's cleaned a sump, you end that day and you're like, there has to be a better way. Like, you go home covered in chips and gross coolant and just feeling sticky, and you're like, that there's got to be something else that makes this better.
absolutely, and if you take Freddie away from it, there's people that do things with air, with gas to extract. The fact that we come back again and say we have a motor that runs that doesn't tail off with its suction, it just pulls and does the job, no fuss. The crucial thing here is lots of people do well, we'll suck it out, but they're dumping it. And that's my biggest frustration. The thing that I knew that we were different from everybody else is, why are you throwing that away? We can get more life. The thing that causes the problem is just the attrition from the bits. I mean, I'm not picking on you, but you must see scratching in painted covers and just on axes that are moving around. You've got that scratching. Why let that happen? Why can't we take that out? A conveyor is useful. It does a certain amount, but some people with tight space can't have it. It just augers out and displaces your coolant. And then that coolant can't quench the heat in the tool. So you then have to back off the feed and speed, or you think you have to buy something better that cuts. Well, why can't we get the coolant volume back to where it should be? Why can't we unburden the coolant pump so it breathes properly and squirts what it should do onto your work? Why can't we clear those lines out? Why does it have to move around with horrible scratching noises and just, the thought of somebody recently told me they'd spent 20 I'm trying to work out the dollars. It'd be about $30,000 on a spindle. Does that sound right for a very spanky German?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just cringed and I thought, and he actually said it was just full of crap. Can I say crap? It was full of crap. And so the fact that we can take that out and then we've got an advantage. Coolant guys are going to hate me. We're reducing the new coolant bill because you're using less. You're not paying for it to be taken away because you might get another go out of it. If you got one more go out of it, it's good. But as you're seeing now, you're going to get 2 goes, 3 goes, 4 goes. So suddenly your expenditure has changed. If you can go faster and the tools are not wearing out, happy days. So it's not the magic bullet. It's not the be all and end all, but it's a massive benefit to complement your machine and a conveyor or other systems. But then recently, in the last few months, we've been in a famous. That sounds too grand, doesn't it? A well-known motorsport company in the UK who had spent a fortune on a DMG, and it had the fanciest filtration system on it. And they said, "We don't need to demo on this one. Let's use another machine further down." I said, "Well, no, let's use this one." He said, "You don't need to because it's all sorted with that big box there. Look, it pulls it offline, deals with it, and it goes back in." I said, "All the more reason to try it." So he said, "Well, you can, but you're not going to get anything out." And it was almost like arms folded, eyes closed. He's just like, "You're just gonna fall over." And we go in and we did exactly what you did, where he's like, "Why is it stopped?" He said, "Because we're now gonna take the lid off and we're gonna have a look." And we posted it up and his jaw dropped because you never know what's under the surface. And that's the most enjoyable. It's almost like magnet fishing and you pull it all out and he's like, "Oh my God." And I know why he felt that because he'd spent such a massive amount on the filtration system and it hadn't got to the filtration system because it was all blocked up around the conveyor and all the baffles.
Hmm.
So, he
Conveyors
was
can
like,
be amazing and they can also be the worst. Like a bad conveyor is worse than having no conveyor very often, at least in my experience.
I'm with you. You go in, we talked about fun, and I love it when I go into somewhere or any of my guys go into somewhere and you do something for them in the same way you discovered. And it's that this just, it should take a day. You've just done it in 5 minutes. This is going to be ace. We want this because now, if it isn't a boss watching you who's suddenly gone, "Oh my God, I can make so much more money now because I'm not, had got all that downtime." It's an operator who's normally the one that's put upon and like, "I do not want to be doing this. This is a horrible job." So suddenly smells have gone, all that normal associated crap we're dealing, it's just sort of, it's made a difference. And it may sound arrogant, but what we do in the UK, we say to people, if Freddie hasn't paid for himself within 12 to 18 months, then you're gonna have a refund and you're sending the machine back. And then if you think you're gonna keep it 30, 40 years, it's definitely going to work for you, which is now I think why people are finding on Instagram we can't afford to pay people to go and make videos. We don't have that kind of dollar. People can look us up. We aren't that big. So the fact that they're having fun, enjoying, and going, "I'm going to put this up because it works for them," That's what's sort of it's helped us massively, and the longevity thing, there was one the other day, I don't know if you saw it, another sh another shout because he didn't have to do it, Cobra frame building.
Yeah,
Do you know?
Joe's. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we that cannot be staged. It's not a plant at all. So he decides to go to an auction in Ohio. You can't put a 31-year-old machine and expect him to go and buy it. So he decides in his sort of his money, he's going to buy one. Hell of a risk. And what's impressive about it is that machine in America, and it's the same anywhere, he's paid nearly 65% of new value, and the machine's 31 years old, and it works. I don't know of anything else. Well, old lathes and machines and millers will do that, of course, won't they? So, that was great, and he's just had a few spares, and it's as new, and away you go. And he's got probably suits him because the tube and the frame is looks like a bicycle anyway.
Right. Yeah, yeah, it was really cool seeing Joe pick that up. I know him and I were talking over text before he did. He's like, "I think I'm gonna get this," and like sent me a picture of it. I was like, "Yeah, do it. If it's a good price."
He's
And
spot on, and you might look at that as a risk, and it's that age, but it will do another 30 years, and for him also, I'd be amazed in his shop if it doesn't cover itself within 12 to 18 months. So, we were talking in the beginning about, the machine range. There are guys and girls out there working out of their garage with a single mill, and now we can look after them when we couldn't before because we can give them a micro, and they can get into that small whatever it is, Hass, um, and clean out.
yeah, yeah, there's no way that I could fit an EcoVac in my shop. Like I barely have enough space for a micro as it is right now. But yeah, it's great that you guys offer something like that because yeah, otherwise I'd be stuck with my shop vac and filter and all that, and that just was not good.
Yeah, you don't people often overspec. There's this thing like, "Well, I've got a 200-liter sump, so I need a 200-liter Freddy." You don't. When you consider that little thing you've got is, I'm not very good at gallons, but it's 50 liters. What's that, 10 gallons, 11 gallons? It fills in 12 seconds. So if it's that rapid, why do you need something so damn big?
Yeah.
But obviously, you guys do everything big. You've got bigger cars, bigger everything. So I get that, but micro over here is huge. You get people buying those now because they'll just put one by every machine instead of spill mats. Why do you
Right.
want a load of soggy snakes and tissue everywhere? You might as well just pick it up and put it back in your machine.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I think the only thing I would say to anybody looking at a Freddy is if you can fit an EcoVac, being able to pump in and then back into the sump simultaneously is like if you have the room for it, I would definitely spring for the EcoVac because that would be even better.
It, yeah, I get that. I mean, if I worked with you, it's easy because you just put a vacuum in sort of into the sump, open the doors and jet it in. Or another way is we don't want to switch your machine off, so we don't want to trigger an alarm. We want you to be loading parts and them going through. So if I can pull it out and put it back so the level doesn't drop, I've not got the downtime. So again, that's why payoff. I know a lot of people think, wow, a lot of dollars. But again, what is it if you have to switch that machine off for 4 hours, 5 hours, what's that gonna cost you? If we're recycling the oil, well, again, we come back, that payback's 12 to 18 months easy. So,
Yeah, definitely. Well, that brings me to the last question I ask every guest every week, which is what did you research this week? Doesn't have to be machining related or Freddy related, just, what's been popping up in your browser.
oh, keep it clean. Um, honestly, what I've put a lot of effort into is I'm trying to work out well, if anybody wants to help me on this, that would be good because I don't know. We've had solar fitted to the factory 2 years ago, and it's paid for itself really quickly. Again, planets, stars, everything's aligned. I don't know why or how. I don't know what upper power is working here because nobody knew about wars and COVID. So we put the solar on, and the payback that was indicated. Well, that's gone out the window. It's done itself in just a year or so. Um, so we're going again. So we're doubling up. So we make sure that we are just using green energy to make our units. We're not going to the grid for extra. It's effectively free. But I need someone far smarter than me. My problem is on a Friday afternoon. So Freddy's probably too cushy to work at. We finish at lunchtime on a Friday. So all
Oh,
the
that's
staff
great.
have they can go home Friday lunchtime, they don't come back till Monday. So what do I do with all those kilowatts from Friday lunchtime, Saturday, Sunday? We're making and it kind of falls dead. You, maybe someone out there might say, well, you need power walls and batteries, but we're running welders. So it's not like it's switching on a light or a washing machine. There's big jolts of power.
Right.
Uh, so what I'm researching is selling back to the grid and
Hmm.
understanding. I'm not looking to try and make lots of money. What I'm trying to do is give back. If there's such if there's such a demand, well, there is in the UK anyway. It may be different for the States, but we don't have loads of windmills and hydro and things where we're very efficient. We don't have lots of nuclear like France have. So if I'm making 50 kilowatts of power at a decent time on a Saturday and Sunday, can someone else not use it? So how do I get it back? So that's in the browser
Okay.
currently.
Yeah, that's great. I know. I bet you there's ways to power those welders too from it with batteries, because I know there's a few shops that I know of that are running their CNCs off of solar, and so I don't know if they have three phase converters then off the batteries or how that all works. But yeah, I mean, if you can sell it back, I know that depending on where you live in the US, you're either incentivized or de-incentivized to sell it back. It's almost a wash. But if you can, yeah, why not, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's three people in the UK. The beauty again of Insta is, well, I suppose any platform you can share advice so there's people can look up Russ at Bernard Holmes Precision, as Tim at Protech, there's Dan at Vixen CNC. They've all gone solar. We've all chatted with each other to see those boys though. They've got some serious hardware. We're talking big Mazaks and DMGs and very, very nice places, but they're in it 3, 4, 5 times what we've got, and they run successfully the machine shop, and they have to because their pence per kilowatt is horrendous. Um, but yeah, I'm just trying to work out, can we give to the town that we're in at the weekend? Could someone not use that?
Yeah, that'd be
So
great. Yeah, I know that that's something Brad and I would love to do in the future. When we finally either build or buy a shop, is have it mostly solar or 100% solar. Because especially in Arizona, I think we get more days of sunshine than anywhere else in the world, or definitely at least anywhere else in the U.S. And so we might as well. Like we got the power just sitting there. We definitely should.
I'd recommend it to anyone. It was the best thing that we did. I mean, it's scary at first when you spend the money, but, even if we just make it available for locals to bring their electric cars, which seem more and more prevalent in our country than perhaps the US, where you can afford to run a big V8, you wouldn't want to do that in the UK. So maybe we can open up and put a few chargers in that people can come up and, tap a pod with their credit cards and just pay for the electricity. But that's honestly in mine. Does anybody ever ask what's in your browser? What have you researched?
Sometimes I've been doing a little bit of 3D. I don't know about 3D printing research, but you can kind of see up behind me over here. I posted it on my Instagram. I printed this cool moon light that some
That
guy
was
made.
all. Yeah, no, that was incredible.
Um,
I did see that.
yeah, so I've been looking into that a little bit. Just how to print it right and bulbs for it and yada yada yada. Nothing major. And then most of it has been actually machining related. Like I think I mentioned it on the last podcast or two ago. My biggest push this year is really automating our workflow. Like I want to make sure that Brad and I are extracting the most money per person out of the company and really have some dialed in workflows before we start hiring. Because like we're gonna have to hire eventually. Like it's
Yeah,
just you know, a you can't sell a business when the two heads of the business are the only people working in it. And B, there's just stuff that we shouldn't be doing at this point, like running the Freddy. Like if I could have somebody run and clean the sumps, that would be great.
absolutely.
So yeah, I have been putting a big push into our fusion templates and all of that, tool paths, tooling choices, work holding, all of that, so that I can just make it so easy for Brad and I to program and run stuff. And the more I do that, I think the happier both of us will be too. Like it's less of the stuff that doesn't make sense for us to keep repeating, running the same tool paths and like having to put in the same settings and having to put in the same speeds and feeds. It just doesn't make any sense. And so that's been a big push. And I'll probably continue to talk about that for the next couple months as I get it spun up. I'm sure people will be tired of hearing it by the time that I'm done and feeling good with it. But yeah, that's been the big thing in my browser. I spend, I don't know, an hour or two a day going through and just either researching something or implementing something or trying something out and just trying to get there.
Yeah, well, I thought I'd better be honest with my answer, so it was solar. But if I had to answer anything else, I'll be honest, it's Valentine's Day in 4 days, so perhaps my second answer is trying to find the best gift for one's wife to keep them happy.
That probably should be in my browser.
Should be in everybody's browser, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good reminder to everybody. I'm not sure this will come out before Valentine's Day, but
Yeah, so it won't work. We can't mention that. Let's cut that. Best Christmas present.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we got to get on it now, 10 months early, and that way we'll be
Yeah, I've
ready.
been researching the best Christmas present because Dylan's got to edit this now and make it work right, so it's not going to be published until November.
No, it'll be much sooner than that for sure.
By which time his Freddy's blown up and he's giving it back to me because it hasn't worked like I promised it would, and his investment was a waste of time.
Yeah, I highly doubt that. Um, well, Simon, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been great to kind of hear your backstory and Freddie's backstory. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and so I really appreciate you taking the time.
I know you have, and I apologize for being too slow and preoccupied with dealing with a Freddy fire, but
I was gonna say, I don't think
I
you were slow. You were just busy. Acquiring another shop and all of that. That's big stuff. So I'm really happy for you guys.
thank you for asking me, and yeah, big shout out to everybody in the community for all your support. It's humbling.
And one more time before we end, where can people find you online?
I would recommend probably the best way to go is Freddy Products Limited on Instagram. I think that's the better route. There is a website which is freddy-products.co.uk, but I think anybody would get more from the Instagram. I think it's better. You'll find us on LinkedIn, but I don't know, many people, do they use that? Maybe the youngsters use TikTok, who knows? I'm no media guy. I don't know what I'm doing. I rely on others to support me to make us look better.
Well, I'll definitely link both of those in the episode description. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone listening. Thanks to all the Patreon members, new ones, Joe and Larry from Sanborn. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. And I will be back next week.